Supervisor Cerna?
Here.
Kennedy? Frost?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
And you have a quorum. Okay, for item 52, this is a resolution of necessity authorizing eminent domain actions to acquire real property for the Elk Grove Florin Road Bridge at Elder Creek project. Property owner Praxides G. De Leon Living Trust, located at 7590 Elk Grove Florin Road. Property owner George S. De Leon and Eugene M. De Leon as trustees of the De Leon Revocable Trust dated January 2nd, 1991, as to an undivided one-half interest, and Maria C. De Leon, a married woman, as to an undivided one-half interest located at 7572 Elk Grove Florin Road. Property owner 3, James G. McCord, a married man, and his sole and separate property, as to an undivided one-third interest, Clark L. Stevens, as trustee of the Stevens Family Trust dated February 19th, 1981, as to an undivided one-third interest, and Raza H. Moftakar and Catherine C. McMillan, husband and wife, as community property, as to an undivided one-third interest located approximately 800 feet northerly from the northwest corner of the Gerber Road and Elk Grove Florin Road on Elk Grove Florin Road. The environmental document is a CEQA notice of determination.
Good morning, Chair Peters, members of the board. Jeff Gasway with General Services, and I'm here to introduce this item. The recommends the board approve for a resolution of necessity authorizing eminent domain action to acquire real property interest for the Department of Transportation's Elk Grove Florin Road Bridge and Elder Creek project. The project will replace the existing functional obsolete bridge crossing Elder Creek. The resolution of necessity before you today are for acquisition easements for public roadway and public utilities, easement for public utilities and public facilities required for the project. The three projects that are affected by the resolution of necessity are located on or adjacent to Elder Elk Grove Florin Road at Elder Creek and are described in the list of properties which is attachment 2 in your board documents. County staff have made numerous contacts with respective owners beginning in October. These are outlined in the history of contacts in attachment 3 in your board package. The county obtained appraisals from independent appraisers for each of the properties and presented offers to the property owners for the purchase of the easements I just mentioned. However, to date, there are no executed purchase agreements. The notice of intention to seek approval for resolution of necessities were mailed out to property owners by registered mail at least 15 days before today's hearing. If you have any questions regarding the project or the property in question, I have staff available to address your questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, I do have one member of the public signed up to speak. Blair Will.
Madam Chair, I'm actually here to speak on item 53. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It says 52. All right.
Thank you.
There be a motion? There are no comments?
Madam Chair, if I just could, we did receive a letter, the clerk did, from Mr. De Leon to address this. Though it was in the packet, and I don't know, maybe Jeff, you could.
We received an email from the family this morning, and they are not going to show or ask for a 30-day continuance, and we are scheduling a meeting to meet with them later on this week.
Okay, with that, then I would move the staff recommendation.
Second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Next item, please.
Item 53 is the resolution of necessity authorizing eminent domain action to acquire real property for the Gerber Elder Creek Channel Improvement Project from Elk Grove Reserve. Vachi Kabayan and Katia Kabayan, trustees of the Vachi Kabayan and Katia Kabayan Family Trust, the Kerr Family LLC, Thomas P. Kerr Incorporated, Thomas P. Kerr, Bruce E. Bettig, BMB Investment Company, Reserve Interest and Management Incorporated, Margot K. Thielander, John L. Miller, and Joyce L. Miller as trustees of the 1993 Irrevocable Bettig Family Trust, Mary Eugenia Shamul, located on the east side of Elk Grove Florin Road, approximately 1,000 feet north of Gerber Road. The environmental document is an environmental impact report and supplemental environmental impact report.
Good morning, Chair Peters, members of the board, Jeff Gasaway, General Services. I'm here to introduce this item, which recommends the board approve resolution of necessity authorizing eminent domain action to acquire real property interest for the Department of Water Resources Gerber Elder Creek Channel Improvement Project. The project improvements will allow for gravity drainage of storm drains, pipes, and is designed for future developments for the impact of the 100-year floodplain. The project that is affected by this resolution of necessity is located on the east side of Elk Grove Florin Road, approximately 1,000 feet north of Gerber Road, and consists of approximately 36 acres of raw land formerly operated as a golf course. The real property interest required for the project is approximately 14,955 square feet for a drainage easement located along Gerber Creek, which is in your attachment 1 of your board package. County staff have made numerous contacts with the respective owners beginning November 2017. These are outlined in the history of the owner contacts. The county obtained an appraisal from an independent appraiser for the property and presented the offer to the property owner for the purchase of the easements I just mentioned. However, to date, there are no executed purchase agreements. Notice of intentions to seek approval for resolution of necessity was mailed to the property owners by registered mail 15 days before today's meeting. If you have any questions regarding the project or the property in question, I have staff available to address them.
Mr. Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff, if I could, we received correspondence that went to the clerk dated last Friday, I believe, and some that was dated earlier last week. And the property in question was the former Champions Golf Course and Driving Range. And as outlined in the letter from Mr. Bettig, and obviously there's counsel here today representing the property owner group, there was in the letter that we all received discussion about the code enforcement issue that has been ongoing for some time, and I think some of the frustration property owners have felt in attempting to deal with that on the private side of it. But it's kind of bundled up in this discussion here this morning, at least in the correspondence we received, in that they're asking that as a part of this, there's the financial piece that goes with acquiring a property, but then that there be some consideration for, I guess, if there are code enforcement outstanding charges and so forth. Could you just elaborate on the discussions and whether or not that can actually be a part of a settlement?
I don't, I'd have to defer to county council on that. I don't believe that we can mix the two.
Now, have there been liens placed against the property for delinquent code enforcement charges? I mean, again, that's not spelled out in the letter from the...
I believe so. Keith, did you want to address that?
Good morning, board members, Deputy County Counsel
Morning,
Keith Floyd. I'm not aware of actual liens at this point, but there are code enforcement charges that have been incurred, and I believe I looked yesterday on the Excel system, and I saw it was around $6,800, all having to do. Actually, the property has gone to a nuisance abatement hearing. I believe there's been some activity out there that the property owners have taken to abate the nuisance, but there's a continuing problem of junk and rubbish. There's a mention in here of a criminal action. As of yesterday, there was no action that's been filed. As to your question with respect to whether the negotiations are for a possible settlement relating to the acquisition can include the code enforcement action, those are two separate matters. I can understand from the property owner's perspective, it's the county as a larger entity, but in terms of what can actually be paid as just compensation for the necessary easements for the project, it's just the amount that has been, first of all, it's been offered, and then the property owner has their own appraisal and whether there can be a negotiated settlement based on dollars for that. So, you know, we have other actions where the Department of Transportation or whichever department it is might take some action to do something else to address an issue having to do with the project, build a wall or something like that. But in this case, again, they're two separate matters, so there's nothing that the department can do with respect to the code enforcement matter.
Well, I just might note that what we're proposing here is to acquire frontage along Elk Grove Florin Road. This property obviously has access to Gerber, and the property is much larger than what's being negotiated relative to the actual acquisition. And I guess I would just say, and certainly hear from counsel from the property owners, but that irrespective of how this gets ironed out, that if the right was acquired, there's still a large piece of property that will be there that, you know, until it's redeveloped or developed in a different fashion, and or some of the nuisance activities cease by virtue of somebody's actions, that's still going to exist irrespective of what we do here. Is that
correct?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Other questions for staff? I do have a speaker, Blair Will. Excuse me.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Blair Will with Pioneer Law Group. I'm here on behalf of Bruce Bettig. Bruce Bettig is a managing member of the Elk Grove Reserve. Some of you may already know him. Mr. Bettig and the Elk Grove Reserve do not oppose the resolution of necessity or the acquisition of the property. As was earlier discussed, there are some issues related to the fair market value of the property. So there's no opposition, but Elk Grove Reserve nevertheless would need to recover fair market value for the property. Mr. Bettig appreciates that that's an ongoing conversation, and fair market value is not on the table in this particular juncture of the process. But he wanted me to make you aware that he doesn't oppose the resolution, but he is going to the best of his ability, negotiate a fair market value which meets his requirements. And just so you know, at this point, I think based upon some oral offers that were made by the county, we're within a range of $10,000 or $15,000 apart on the agreed fair market value. So it seems to me and to Mr. Bettig that we could ultimately work out some kind of arrangement in that regard. The larger problem, and the reason that Mr. Bettig asked me to address you this morning, and I appreciate your indulgence on this, concerns the homeless problem. and the abatement. And Mr. Bettig has taken some steps, some substantial steps to abate the nuisance pursuant to the order from the county. There have been numerous efforts to clean up trash on the property. He has demolished the on-site bathroom that was there previously from the existing use as a golf course. All of those steps have been taken to the best of his ability. He has hired private security to come around on a regular basis. Frankly, the security company is a little bit unhappy with the circumstances in dealing with the homeless people there. While this has been going on, I appreciate earlier comments stating that this was two separate processes, and we all understand that. At the same time, while a resolution of necessity and acquisition of the property is being negotiated by one portion of the county, another portion of the county is threatening Mr. Bettig with a criminal indictment. Yes, it's true the criminal indictment has not yet issued, but as of last week, we were receiving emails from the district attorney stating that she's going to go forward with a criminal indictment. So this is very serious. Mr. Bettig has retained criminal counsel. I'm not that person, but I do think that from the board's perspective, that's something that we should be looked into. Mr. Bettig is being tasked with taking care of a homeless problem that exists as a larger problem for the county, as we all know. So those are my comments. If you have any questions, I will remain around the chambers for a moment. Thank you.
If you wait just a minute, Mr. Natoli has a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
More just a comment, Mr. Will. I would just indicate, I know the community prosecutors obviously work with code enforcement and other enforcement agencies of the county on issues that have, a certain standing to them. I guess I would suggest, and maybe it's already occurred, that last year we certainly ramped up through board actions our work to, and Mr. Bettig in his correspondence included some of the homeless initiatives, but what I was going to suggest is that in working with the Sheriff's Department, we have a homeless outreach team that will work with property owners, certainly, and a community prosecutor. Obviously, if they're ongoing nuisance, will get involved, but they've been very effective in dealing with, and some of these are reoccurring. It's not just here on this property. If that's the case, it's throughout our communities, and it might be again, you're not counsel for him on this matter, but I would just offer. I've met Bruce in the past, that it might be to arrange a meeting before things get too far down the road here with sheriff's hot team representatives or one of our sergeants, pop teams, and recognizing there is a Walmart adjacent that certainly might attract certain activity that I think that, and he's referenced that in the letter, that it might be wise for folks to sit down and talk about a plan of action and where the county could cooperate with the property owner, but recognize obviously property owner responsibility as well. So I just wanted to
I appreciate those comments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Natoli. We have worked with the county and with the Sheriff's Department. It's a big problem. The ultimate solution, I presume, is probably redevelopment of the property and to eliminate the
It's a big acreage, and it spreads out, and it has access to public streets and the creek, and obviously some other things that provide some cover for folks.
I understood. And I would just make one further comment. I'm a land use counsel. I deal with land use matters. I do represent Mr. Bettig in this regard, but not with regard to the criminal side. But I would tell you this, that there are also some other additional abatement processes which are available to the county short of the criminal indictment. So, but we would like to work it out rather than have it go further. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
No, I'd move staff recommendation then.
Second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote. Okay, we're right on time for item 54. Item 54 is the Randolph Road tentative parcel map, a rezone for a rezone from a 10 to AR5, and tentative parcel map to divide 11.32 acres into 2 lots for a property located at 11350 Randolph Road in the Consumnes community. The environmental document is a negative declaration.
Good morning. Members of the board, Leanne Moffett, your County Planning Director, here to give a short PowerPoint presentation and then also briefly explain revised materials that were submitted that have some technical corrections in them and what those are about. So the project is located at 11350 Randolph Road, a half-mile west of Dillard Road in the Consumnes community. The request before you today is to rezone the site, the 11.32 acre site, from A10, which is a 10-acre minimum, to AR5, which is 5-acre minimum, and for a corresponding tentative parcel map for 2 lots each both a little over 5 acres in size. We have concluded that it is compatible with the area and that a slight majority of the surrounding lots, 11 of the 20 surrounding lots, are 5 acres in size or less. With approval of the rezone, the tentative parcel map lot sizes would meet development standards. There is currently a primary residence that would end up being on parcel 1. And the lot currently has a residential accessory unit that would go as the primary residence on parcel 2. And I understand that both of those are modular homes rather than stick-built. There was a negative declaration prepared and some associated mitigation measures around the potential impacts to Swainson's hawk habitat and native trees. There were neighbors who attended the Community Planning Advisory Council meeting. They did not necessarily oppose the project. One CPAC member objected and voted no because of the potential to add additional accessory dwelling units on each parcel after the parcel map is approved, and that was a concern. The Cosumnes CPAC ended up recommending approval on a 6-to-1 vote with one absence of the proposed project. The Planning Commission considered this in June and recommended approval on a 4-to-0 vote with one absence. So the recommended actions are listed in your board report and on the slide. I did want to clarify, we issued some revised materials. They have to do with the conditions in attachment 2. They do not change the project or any of the project technical merits. We did miss imposing a legal condition that clarifies that the map is not approved until the effective date of the rezone. And then we needed to clarify some coding that guides the clerk's office in the preparation of the post-hearing materials about which are rezone conditions and which are map conditions. And so that's what that revision does. It doesn't change any of the other conditions. So that concludes the staff presentation.
Any questions for staff?
Yes.
Mr. Natale?
Yeah, very quickly. I noted in the staff report, and again, you, I think, very aptly covered the community council discussion in summary. And as it relates to any residential accessory units in the future, if they exceed 800 square feet, they still require a use permit under our code. So there would be, if folks had concerns about that, recognizing that's somewhat ministerial now under state law, but nonetheless, there are guidelines for that. Is that correct?
That is correct. The smaller units are allowed outright. Larger units do require a conditional use permit, and we do have a number of somewhat controversial accessory dwelling units wandering their way through the process as a result of our new ordinance having to do with judging compatibility. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thanks. If there are other questions, Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move the item. So.
Second. Is that a second?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you. Okay. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Next item, please.
Item 55 is an ordinance to amend the Rancho Murrieta Plan Development Ordinance related to the Murrieta Gardens 1 and 2 development. The environmental determination is exempt.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Joelle Lindman, and I am a senior planner with Planning and Environmental Review. I do have a brief presentation and PowerPoint. The project before you today is an amendment to the Rancho Murrieta Plan Development Ordinance. It applies to the section or chapter of the PD ordinance that covers Murrieta Gardens 1 and 2 development. Highlighted here in red and below in the hash marks is the Murrieta Gardens 1 and 2 site. It's generally bounded by Jackson Highway to the north, the Rancho Murrieta Airport and Cosumnes River to the south, and Murrieta Village and Murrieta Drive to the east. A little background about the Rancho Murrieta PD ordinance. 77 PD 10 was adopted in 1977 and was almost a complete rewrite of the Rancho Murrieta prior master plan and ordinance. Section 10 of the 77 PD established procedures and standards for projects within Rancho Murrieta. One of those was that each unit of development be processed as an amendment to the zoning ordinance. This process elevates nearly all proposed projects to the Board of Supervisors for consideration with conditions of approval embedded into the ordinance. Section 20 covers the Murrieta Gardens 1 and 2 project sites specifically, and this board has seen amendments to that chapter with the Murrieta Inn and Hotel, and subsequently approved that project. Specifically, Section 277 of Chapter 20 is a condition of approval that allows for all uses within the LC zone to be allowed outright on the property. So anything that's conditionally permitted or otherwise needing an entitlement would be considered inconsistent with Section 277. So as that wasn't the intent as the projects move forward out there, that they need an entitlement to the Board of Supervisors every single time. Staff has initiated this amendment to Section 277 of Chapter 20 to clarify that uses that are conditionally permitted would be subject to the normal process as outlined in the zoning code. In essence, leveling the playing field for this property to the rest of the unincorporated county. Given that staff believes that it was an oversight, PER began an amendment to the zoning code by taking a resolution of intention to the Planning Commission on March 12th, 2018. The Planning Commission heard that item and approved the resolution. On March 23rd, 2018, we took the item to the Consumnes Community Planning Advisory Council. The council had some concerns about whether or not this was allowing for uses above and beyond what the rest of the county was allowed, and we explained that it was actually leveling the playing field. After that explanation, they unanimously recommended approval, 6 yes, with 2 absences. And finally, on June 11th, 2018, the Planning Commission met and unanimously also recommended approval to the Board of Supervisors. And with that, staff is recommending that the board recognize the exempt status of the project and approve the ordinance. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Frost has a question or comment.
I just wanted to thank staff for working with us on this. It's great that you were able to find a solution that worked for everyone and move approval.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan is here and he wanted to, did you want to make a comment, Mr. Sullivan? No, not unless we had a question,
No.
huh? Okay. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Mr. Cerna, I didn't see your name come up there.
Is this the first time you presented in front of us?
No, it's not.
You don't present in front of us very often.
I do not, no.
I just want to say good job.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Ms. Frost, you made a motion on the item?
Second.
Have a second? Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Item, please.
We have
So
4
it's
minutes.
10:45. We got 4 minutes to go, huh? Okay. We need to develop some activities in the range of 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, we'll recess until 10:45.